Prize for Fiction 2016 and was longlisted for the Man Booker Prize. Guest is a writer, filmmaker and columnist for The Telegraph, India Today as well as other publications. He is best known for his debut novel, The Last Jet Engine Love, in the year 2001. Let us welcome with a round of applause, Mr. Ruchir Joshi. Our next panelist has 3 books to his name, which includes Silverfish in the year 2007 and Prose of the World 2013. His debut novel, The Firebird 2015, has been critically acclaimed to be a purely contemporary work of Indian fiction. He is none other than Mr. Saikat Majumdar. Our moderator, Ms. Debaroti Chakraborti. She is a PhD student in the Department of Comparative Literature.
She's a teacher.
I'm a professor in Presidency University in the Department of Performing Arts. Yeah. That's okay. I think this just needed to be updated. That's okay.
I request our panelists to begin this.
I'm really thrilled to be discussing this topic, literary awards and the writers. I have since, as a scholar of literature, I have been critically engaged with the processes of cultural production, and this is particularly of interest to me, that I am with accomplished writers, award winners, nominees, a creator who dabbles with different forms, because literary awards, since my teens, at a point of time, they did guide my literary choices, my reading habit. But also, literary awards and writers, these two categories do not really form a monolith anymore. I think, the way they feed into as well as eschew each other, that opens up a lot of debates about the politics and the ethics of literary awards, the politics and ethics of publication. With many awards in English writing, translation in English, which are mushrooming in our country, I think this is of importance to think that how do these literary awards contribute to or intervene in the culture of reading, in the buying of books, discussions around books. So we are going to touch upon these bold shades and more finer shades, I think, in this discussion. Probably we can begin with Saikat Majumdar to my extreme right, and if Saikat can elaborate a little bit on this.
Sure, I'm so delighted to be here and to be using this amazing microphone, which I was telling makes me feel like I'm holding a stuffed toy. It's lovely. It could be. So thank you for being here. I know we are all running late. I was, I had very mixed feelings about the subject of this panel, because it's like, I'll tell you why. Because I think awards are a kind of an academic intervention into what should have been, or probably was sometime in the past, a popular field. Literature, is meant to be a popular field, kind of out there, organically connected to people's. And this was the whole understanding of literature in days of Dickens, or say Shakespeare, who obviously never thought of himself as producing literature, because that kind of, his performance, and he never had that consciousness of being a great art. So awards are, the reason I call it academic is not that it comes from the academy, though it sometimes does. There are awards instituted by universities, but by academic I mean a judgment procedure which carries an institutional stamp. That yes, I'm going to stamp it as excellent, and that is, for me, an academic kind of an assessment as opposed to something that just grows naturally. Of course, I don't have any illusions about natural growth because nothing is natural. There are all kinds of other processes, whether it's a blog or a review or something. But still, within that, the authority the award carries is in many ways a kind of an academic stamp. And what's interesting is, I think this is why I think the comparison with figures like Dickens and Shakespeare is very useful, because awards also carry the modern romantic notion of art as conscious of itself, that art is great art, that I am kind of art, which is, say, the consciousness which Shakespeare never did. That, it's like he thought of himself as he would be probably as, recent scholars and critics have argued, a kind of Elizabethan equivalent of a Bollywood filmmaker. Like, oh, I'm just trying to make money. Whereas with the Enlightenment and Romanticism, art becomes elevated into a kind of discrete and separate entity. It is, and in some ways the award idea reflects that. Now, that being said, it's not that the academic or the critical and the popular are really separable, because in today's world what happens is, awards do sort of accelerate popularity of works, because for many people they're looking what to read. There's so much to read as we go on. There's so much to read. Who will do the selection for us? So awards obviously are a process through which selection is made. This has the stamp of certain authority, and of course works get a different kind of authority with time. So when you read, say, something like The Wasteland, the difficulty of the poem. If you read a contemporary poem like that, you might put it away after first couple of stanzas, but you wouldn't do it with The Wasteland because it has been canonized as great, with time. Now, awards do something similar on a kind of short-term scale, and that obviously that's how the critical or the academic feeds into the popular, because it does. Awards, especially well-known awards, I think the two awards which have real effect today is the Booker and the Pulitzer. They definitely do that. Personally, for me as a writer, I think the greatest satisfaction, I haven't won a significant award. I've been on Shortlist, so this is the Shoo part is what applies to me. Anuradha can talk about the dark side of winning awards, which she's planning to. The first book of mine which was on a shortlist was a book of criticism, Prose of the Bold, which was mentioned. It was on the shortlist of the Modernist Studies Association of America, and it eventually got this strange thing called honorable mention, so the kind of runner-up consolation prize. But the great thing is people read the book with attention. And you have some wonderful, intelligent and sensitive readers who will give that time to the book. My novel, The Firebird, was on the shortlist on an award, Bangalore Literature Festival, the Apeejay Literature Festival Award, and I was not there at the award ceremony. I watched it live streamed. I was in Delhi. I was watching it. It was happening in Bangalore, and the most gratifying part of the ceremony was the jury spoke about the book. And I remember Usha K.R., who was on the jury, and I think Vivek Shanbag and Shashi Deshpande. There were a number of people who really spoke about, and I think Anuradha, you were also on the shortlist, Apeejay. Yeah, so they were talking about the book, and it was very gratifying to hear, that this kind of intelligent and sensitive, reading, that people have singled out. But beyond that, as I said, that sort of shoot, I haven't had the satisfaction of actually winning it, so the shortlist part I know. But I think in many ways, that's what matters, to a great degree for me, to be read with sensitivity. And after that, of course, it's wonderful to win an award, and whether the book comes out with an edition of your winner of that, and publishers are obviously more sort of egging on these things, okay, winner, shortlist, finalist, they love those things on the cover, and for all it does. I mean, I'm sure as readers it catches on our eye too. But I'm very intrigued by this in some way, the paradoxical formulation of this kind of judgment which carries the authority, and it is imposed on it. And I think it's not a bad thing. So it's with modern age we've come with the self-consciousness of the art as an art form, and that we have to live with that. And that's where it is. But I'd love to hear what others say about this.
Yeah, I think Anuradha can take it up from here and talk about the dark side of...
Well, I actually just came from not winning an award. I was just in Chennai for the Hindu Literature Festival, where my book was shortlisted for the Hindu I think it's called the Lit for Life Prize. And it was quite striking that we were waiting. I usually have never gone to the award ceremonies where my book has been shortlisted, except one other time. And we were waiting outside, and there was Neelam Sarangor, who was a writer in her, I think, mid-60s. And there was Anjum Hassan, and there was me. We were just hating it, this waiting. All of us were hating it. The judges were kind of slinking past us into the auditorium because by then they knew who they had picked, and they didn't want to meet the eyes of those they hadn't. So it's a completely awful situation, and Neelam was expressing her unhappiness, and she said, don't you remember and want that time when there was none of this? When we just wrote books and some reviews came out and some people bought the books. And Anjum, who is younger than me, looked completely zapped and said, no, I don't remember a time like that. So I realized at that time that people of our generation who are writing have never known a time when we have written without this kind of stamp that Saikat was talking about being there as a kind of. And I think you need to, actually when you're talking about awards, you have to divide it into, say, first of all, the culture of awards, which you were discussing. And that it is actually a kind of offshoot of consumerism, where you make a kind of top of the pops of all the books that have come out. Some people do that for you, so that the consumer, who in this case is the reader, doesn't have to actually read through or to explore in a bookshop. He just goes to, and now the irony of this is, for example, suppose you have won a prize which is 1 lakh and you're the winner. That is not like being the winner of the JCB prize, which is 28 lakhs. So it is completely monetary and consumerist, this whole approach to the prizes. And then the winner's book is meant to be better than the shortlisted and long. I mean, somehow after that the winner is more special than, whereas at the time everybody is on a shortlist. Everyone knows that the jury will almost arbitrarily pick a winner because all those books are excellent books. Apart from all of this, then you come to the other side of it, which is the booker that you mentioned. Now the booker has very, very peculiar rules. For example, each publisher can submit only 2 books per publisher for the booker. So if you are with a big press where someone like Ian McEwan or Rushdie will publish a book, their very powerful agent will have written into the contract that his client's book will be submitted for the booker. So if you are, say, a first-time writer with a brilliant book, your book will not even have been submitted. That's the other thing. The third thing is that up to this time, only recently are you seeing some awareness of the gender imbalance in the giving of prizes. Earlier, all the juries were largely male. Most winners of, when you look at the lists of winners of prizes, it's astonishing what number men win and the number that women win. And about 2 or 3 years ago, Kamila Shamsi had written quite a powerful piece about this. If you just look at we were just talking about the Gyanpith because Amitabh Ghosh very happily won the Gyanpith. I don't know whether you win it or you're kind of bestowed it or whatever. But if you look at the Gyanpith, I think a total of maybe 70 odd Gyanpiths have been given, of which only 12 have gone to women over all these years. So there is that aspect of it, of people's prejudices which may be gendered, which may be it may be coming from anywhere, but mostly we see a huge gender imbalance in awards. Now the other very curious thing, since I've had the privilege of winning a few, I can tell you that winning an award in India is from an Indian prize giving authority, is a very, very mixed kind of blessing. Because right now I don't know if you've been following this controversy which is going on with, is she a shooter who won a gold medal in Haryana called Manu Bakar. This girl won a Junior Olympics gold medal. She's the first. So the moment she won this gold medal, the sports minister of Haryana, who's called, I think, Anil Vij very flamboyantly tweeted saying he would give her 2 crore rupees, which of course has not come. So she in turn tweeted saying, where is my 2 crore? Then Anil Vij and the whole of Haryana is blaming her for being a gold digger. These people only want a hand in the till. Why doesn't she concentrate on her sports instead? She's getting all kinds of flack. And I can tell you that when I won these awards, I will not name which ones, because I'll be in trouble. But they don't give you, they are not very willing to actually hand you the money that they have said they will give you. I cannot, ultimately my publisher had to write to them saying, what on earth is going on and do you want us to go public about this? So this went on for months, and then they will pay the, they are meant to deduct tax at source. And when I won this prize, couple of them, I never ever thought that there would be so much headache that you will actually actively not want to win prizes in India because you're saddled with it. I mean, then you have to follow through with all this tax stuff and everything. So the fun of it is pretty much gone if you have won it. So I think it's awards are it's prestige for a writer to win an award. Some awards do add to the sales. Significantly, the Booker adds to the sales, and maybe the Pulitzer. Other awards don't really add to sales. Writers don't earn a whole lot from their writing. So the prize money is something, I mean, poor this girl shooting, wanting her 2 crores. She needs to earn. She's a villager in Haryana. So I don't know. I mean, I have very mixed feelings about this stamp of approval from a committee.
Different if it was a man asking for money?
No. With the literary prizes, as soon as I won, there was a male previous winner over there. And he told me, okay, enjoy it for today. After this, the whole pain will begin.
Thank you, Anuradha. Ruchir, as Anuradha speaks about the culture of winning awards and the facade around it as well. In addition to how you respond to this topic, if you could also talk about what it does to the circle of circulation around awards, and then in this circle of circulation, what is lost and found in terms of themes, genres, literary styles, identities, in relation to writing per se.
So first of all, I think if one or two of you Google all the awards that Anuradha has won, and let's figure out which ones haven't paid her, because I really want to know. I was going to say, after Shrico spoke and Anuradha pointed it out, that awards are an imprimatur from the sort of critical community, but they're also very much established by commercial interests as well, in the sense that especially all these proliferation of all these new awards is definitely, and in not just in literature, but also in art and various other cultural fields, it is these companies wanting to push themselves forward to say that, hey, hum bhi hain, and this award is a such and such award, or this award is a such and such award. I mean, it's not entirely like this marketing award that our Prime Minister has just won, but it's not unconnected in the sense that the company is thrusting itself forward to say, we care about art, we care about culture, literature, and this is an award. I grew up in a literary family. My father was a writer. We used to know he was a good writer in Gujarati writing in Calcutta, and we knew a lot of quite penurious Bengali writers. My parents weren't wealthy, and these guys were even poorer because my dad ran a business. My mother worked in Sri Shikhat College, so we had an income. But there were a lot of writers who were just writing for the love of it, and we knew a lot of people who lived very simply, and there was no question of awards in those days, whether it was Premendra Mitra or Vishnu Dey or various other writers. You knew that they were there writing for the love of it, and they had a readership. And occasionally, besides the Academy Award came their way, or Jnanpith came their way or something, there was a matter of huge celebration. My father won the Sahitya Academy Award one time from Radha Krishnan, and that box, my mother kept it in the cupboard with the inlaid box and everything, and it was like the only national award that he won, and for him it was a big deal. And yet at the time when he dies, there's a program run on him in Kolkata Doordarshan, Bombay Doordarshan and Ahmedabad Doordarshan, because all these three, Gujarati and Bengali, he bridged this language gap and he was important in all three cities. But nothing was mentioned in Delhi. So nationally he's never known to be a writer, except he had a readership. Likewise, there's so many other people writing with readerships who cannot imagine this award stuff. The first time I became aware of an award was when this man called Salman Rushdie won something called the Booker Prize. I was like, what is this Booker Prize? Right after that, I just discovered Garcia Marquez, and Garcia Marquez won the Nobel. So Nobel one knew about, and that Tagore had won the Nobel, and after that, no Indian writer was found, man or woman, was found worthy of the Nobel. But then if you read a bestseller like, I don't know, is it Irving Wallace, or who is it? The book is called The Prize, and it's like a masala bestseller about this guy who has won the Nobel Prize for Literature, and he's traveling to Stockholm on a ship. And there's a lot of Me Too moments, and all kinds of stuff happens before he actually receives the prize. I mean, the prize itself becomes like this legendary sort of mulch for a bestseller thriller kind of thing. So those were the awards and things in our minds till Rushdie got the Booker. And after that, it was almost like when India won the World Cup in 1983, the "Acha hum bhi jeet sakte hain" kind of thing. And I wasn't involved in writing literature at the time. I was more into films at that time. But we would always, a new book would come out and I said, the joke is going to win the Booker. You know, that kind of thing. It was a joke because it was like, what is this Booker Prize? And then, of course, the next person to win was yourself. No, you're not Arundhati, sorry. Sorry, we were all trying to make this joke with Anuradha that she's going to be treated as Arundhati Roy. So you all must ask her to autograph the Ministry of Utmost Small Things over here. No, sorry. No, so, I mean, I think awards are important. I think Kamila is a really good friend, and she's been shortlisted for a couple, and then she finally won one. And it can be stressful even if you actually are okay with not winning it, because you have to enter that process, and then you go to there's a photo call and the interviews and all this stuff. I mean, I would love to go through that. I've never been shortlisted for a damn thing, so I don't know. But I'm saying it is stressful. It is stressful even abroad. This story I didn't know. It's quite appalling that you are told you are given this money and then you are not having to chase it. But that's a different matter. I think if you're a writer writing with an award at the back of your mind, then you're dead in the water. If you're writing for anything other than the pleasure of writing something and communicating something to some kind of an audience, I think it shows. And you get a lot of these newer writers, especially writing in English in India and Pakistan, but you can smell that, oh, this person is writing hoping that somewhere shortlist will happen or something. And then the other writers who actually write quite freely and without any worry. And awards are part and parcel of life, so are book festivals, so are all these shushas and bruhas around the sort of award for life's work, because something like a Gnanpith or various other awards that different countries give. They're given for not just a book, but for an oeuvre. So all these things are things you navigate. But ultimately, I do think back to a time where, there's so many books that one loved and read, and they've not smelled anything like an award. So ultimately, when choosing or picking, I would say, sure, don't rule out a book just because it's won an award, and at the same time, be curious to go aside around it if it doesn't catch your interest. And in the meantime, we'll continue to suffer not having been shortlisted, having been shortlisted. I mean, I just to finish with a couple of just anecdotal stories. Again, I won't tell you who was what, but there was one time when a book came out in London, and the publisher told the author that, this other author of mine is on the jury and he loves your book, etc. So this author said, oh, okay, but he said, I don't trust this guy, so we don't know, let's see what happens. And the whole process, I kind of witnessed it at close quarters, the whole process was that this guy who was on the jury was saying one thing to the publisher, but maneuvering quite differently in the jury. And when the shortlist happened with the Booker, this guy who was, or guy or woman who was hoping to get this shortlist wasn't even on the long list. And then when he meets one of the other members of the jury later, he tells her, oh, I'm so sorry, we loved your book, but so-and-so played a very dirty game. So there's all that kind of politics as well. I know of another jury which gave an award to a writer, I will again not mention, a Booker Prize jury, and one of the women who was on the jury was so furious at that award that she said, I had to come back and lie down in bed for 3-4 days. I was seriously physically ill having to give the award to this person. So, I mean, having been on a couple of juries, I know how difficult it is and how haphazard or how random it is what you choose, what you don't choose, the kind of pressures you come under to ruling something out, what you keep. So they are a part and parcel of the landscape. Let's not let them rule the landscape is what I would say.
Thanks, Ruchir. I'm glad that you brought up this topic about writers writing in various regional languages, because I think in India it is of particular interest that this is linguistically so diverse. And I feel that with the proliferation of awards, so I have two questions here. Is there an increase in terms of translation from regional languages into English? And are those fueled by the increase in number of literary awards? And the other one is, what about the traffic the other way around? Like, are these awards in any way influencing the scenario of regional literatures being translated in English and vice versa? If any one of you would want to respond to this.
Let us start with you, which is no more.
Huh?
I said you're also a publisher, so.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely a huge trend now to publish, writing in translation, and that I think it's happened slowly over time. That it's been the awards have probably helped, because. But I also find there's a curious kind of flattening out. I don't know if you, when we were standing there with Neelam, and when my book was earlier in one of the lists for this JCB. First of all, there's a, Nayantara Sehgal at 90, I think Kiran Nagarkar, there's a first timer. So there is a very wonderful erasure of hierarchy in one sense, even as a different hierarchy is being established through the prizes. And again, in most of these prizes now, books written in English and books that have been translated into English are awarded in the same prize, which is also very good, because that is in a sense, I feel it is almost as if the Indian reading public has to be made to forget that the book was ever written in Kannada or Tamil or something. And by putting all these books in English without too much differentiation, all of it is turning into writing in English, in a sense. So it's a kind of erasure and establishment in both cases at the same time.
While listening to Ruchir about this anecdote, I couldn't resist thinking of one myself. I was talking to an established writer. Award goes to somebody whom nobody wanted.
Yeah.
And apparently that's because jury A wants one writer, jury B wants somebody else. But jury B hates A's nominee and jury A hates B's nominee. So the only way they can agree is to basically choose somebody whom nobody wanted but nobody hated. I mean, go figure. I mean, it's like in the end, you are getting the award because no one hates your book. I mean, but no one loves it either. I'm like, so these are the things, these stories can simply proliferate. It's really quite amazing. Yeah, I mean, Anuradha, you're right. I think JCB, I think the book which won the JCB, Jasmine, which is the translation from Malayalam. And it's really interesting. I think in some ways you're right. It's a bold decision to foreground the work of translation. But of course, I think, whether it's remembered. I think the main difference, I think, in writing in vernacular and writing in English in India, and, and obviously you see it when the book's reception, say the US or UK edition is always sort of received differently, is that, there's an organic readership. I think what happens with the one, Ruchir was talking about this, that, these writers have readerships, but they may not have the stamp. I think what happens if you're writing in English is often you do get a certain visibility in the media which doesn't at all reflect what your true readership is. Whereas sometimes I feel like vernacular writers may not get that presence in the media or even literary festivals, which is now thankfully beginning to change, but they actually have an organic readership. It may be local, but I think it doesn't matter whether your readership is local or global as long as you have a passionate readership, people really care about what you're reading. That's what matters. I mean, in some ways, even Rabindranath is a local writer. I mean, in another sense, he's a global writer, but in a more fervent sense, he's definitely a local writer. But does it matter? So I think this is the peculiar predicament of if you're writing in English in India. It's not that whether you can write. I think those debates have been solved. People can, but you are obviously sort of losing touch with a certain organic readership, which which obviously exists, in the US and the UK when your book is coming out there. But here, especially writing about India, and awards are, that's why it's really interesting. Awards in the end don't matter. After maybe 5-10 years, people will read the books they talk about, they love. And that is where I think the vernacular and the English works very differently. There is all these external mechanisms constantly coming and trying to interfere with the process of reception of books, which only work, I think, in the short run. In the long run, people's memory just work differently.
I also wanted, in this business of translations, that there's this translation, say, from European languages into, if you like, the literature of the Western world, again has, the Bhasha writers are the other languages, Estonian, Latvian, what have you, who have always had their very vibrant and devoted local readerships, but have not been, I'm right now reading a book which is Estonian, but had it been published in translation earlier, it would have been Dostoevsky or something. But there have been publishers who have devotedly published translations for years, like the Harwell Press did. And what we are seeing now is a culmination of many, many years of even publishers in India having done translated literature when nobody was looking for it or paying much attention. Now suddenly it's in the spotlight for a combination of reasons. But what I don't understand, just is the need that many reviewers now seem to find to run down the writing in English in order to say actually the best writing is only happening in the, I don't see why it's an either or at all.
English is also vernacular.
Yeah. Yeah, this also brings me to think about South Asian, what is represented and constructed as, how do these awards construct South Asian identities, the construction and representation of South Asian literature. Anuradha has won the DSC prize for South Asian literature for one of your books. So is there a certain kind of South Asian literature which is being constructed, promoted by these awards?
I think there is a definite sort of bigger ghetto, if you like, of Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Sri Lankan books. I think they are connected in a way that there is a break between them and, say, whatever one has seen of Afghanistani literature or Malaysian, Thai, Chinese literature. That there is a regional connectivity there, and I think, as I keep insisting and reminding people, that English is very much and Indian language has been for 500 years and now proliferated more than ever. So I think we also have an organic readership now as writers writing in English in India, mostly in the cities, obviously mostly of a certain class which is educated in English rather than in Hindi, Malayalam, Tamil, Gujarati, Bangla. So I, um, I think things are beginning to shift, and I think the translation and the moving from language to language is just the beginning of this tectonic shift, I think, which is going to yield all kinds of, there'll be hybrid things, there'll be things written which you can maybe, I imagine, be able to translate on the spot while reading the original, click and get a version in different languages. All that is going to come. So the way literature is received and in what language and in what format, all that's going to get blown wide open, I think, soon, and it's happening already in some ways. So in that, let's see how this creature called the award, which is a bit of a lottery, a bit of Russian roulette, I don't know how it will survive or how it will mutate as well. I mean, that would be my sort of curiosity.
Should we open up the house for some questions from our audience? If there's something that we want to discuss amongst ourselves, or I'll open up the house for questions from our audience.
From the discussion, I gleaned that there's an apparent hierarchy in the awards that are given to authors. Don't you think, without commenting on AKLF, there's a hierarchy in literary fests as well? I mean, the festival that is currently, I don't know, proliferating the active imagination of people in India. Because, for example, 5 years ago, no, 6 years ago, I wouldn't have known about even to have a volunteer about AKLF, for example, or even about Kalam, which is going to happen next week, or even about Jaipur Literary Fest, which is apparently the greatest festival of literature. What I feel is that, is there a hierarchy though? I mean, in a way, I feel that there is, because my friends studying at Ashoka or studying at Symbiosis, they tell me, I'll ask them to come here because I'm here, but no, we'll go to Jaipur instead, to the Jaipur Literary Fest. And what is, if asked for the reason was simply it's better or something, but why exactly is it better, I wouldn't be able to say, for example. So, is there a hierarchy, and should there even be a hierarchy? Because inevitably, because of the monetary issue, there ended up being a sort of economic hierarchy in the awards. But does that really matter? Does that matter? Do hierarchies matter in literary awards or literary fests? And what decides these hierarchies?
Like to say the top 10 reasons why Americans are obsessed with rankings. Reason number 1, and so the joke goes, there's kind of, I think it might be one of the American ailments which has taken over the world. I think people love rankings. I think it just simplifies things for them. There is, I think you answered your own question. I don't think it matters. I think it's there. However, there is something else which matters, and that is the thing called the canon. And that, I think, takes years to form. That is not something an award can sort of demarcate in a day or a month. It is something which takes years and decades and sometimes centuries to. Just to give an example of when Jane Austen was writing, far more popular writer was Walter Scott. He was adventure, romance, and Austen was like, what's this living room stories, And today, Austen is. Scott is certainly there in the canon, but there's no doubt with who has literary prestige. Jane Austen has literary prestige, and she has, thanks to Hollywood, has a certain huge hand following too. It's a different thing. So I think it's the question here is that of literary value, which is a very difficult and tricky question. What is literary value? I don't think it can be vulgarized into something as simple as a ranking. The literary works are not better or worse. That being said, there are major works and minor works, And of course, there's some wonderful critical work on what is a minor work, and minor works are not necessarily lesser. I mean, Deleuze and Guattari's wonderful essay on minor writing, So there are very interesting thoughts about that, that it's only time. I think time can tell. Canon, without time, canons cannot be formed. Judging the contemporary is one of the hardest things. And it's not just about literature, it goes with anything. What kind of event is momentous? Sometimes you can't tell today. You might tell 50 years later. So value is a very different thing, and it cannot be vulgarized as something as simple as ranking.
I'll just add to it a little bit, Saikat, since you are a professor of literature. This entire ethics around the building of canons and the deconstruction of canons, do you think that the culture of literary awards in terms of building a literary genius, can that be brought into literary criticism or the study of literary criticism? Would you think of bringing that into the study of literary criticism as an academic intervention?
Well, I mean, to very quickly, I think that would be a sociological study. I think these studies are being done, that literary awards and cultural prestige, there are awards, but it's a sociological study. It has nothing to do with the aesthetics of art. And sociological studies have their place, that's a whole other thing, but doing an anthropology of literature is not the same as studying literature as work of art. So that's
I actually just have a comment, and Debaroti addressed what I was going to say, is that it isn't just a question of the sociology of literature or of art or whatever, because I think one of the most sort of welcome moves, even if it's under the very hefty title of decolonization, is exactly this, decolonization of canons, be it art or literature or whatever. So even when you're naming a bunch of people to say that they have literary merit, and that's something that time will tell, time isn't an abstract category by itself, so we need to see who's reading, whose time are we talking about, and how are these canons being formed. So, I mean, less the connection between awards and canons, because I don't think there is necessarily one between those two across time. But I think we would need to really dismantle the idea of canon as much. But speaking of sociology of, for instance, awards, there was this quite remarkable paper which I can't remember the details of, looking at the Booker Award, and this was at an anthropological conference. And they were talking about the man Booker and the male Booker, and the differences in the shortlist and the awardees of both of those, and there's a hierarchy there as well. But just to also look at the economics behind it, and that's something that all of you have raised, but then how does that lead into the making of canon as well? And perhaps we need to, drop the idea of the canon to really say that we need to all expand everything as much as possible and be inclusive, and then feel free to discard, of course.
Any other questions from the audience?
Yeah, very good evening. I have a concern regarding this literary festival. My concern is that to all the respected panelists, that don't you think that this kind of festival could be organized in an international forum like SARC, BRICS nations, INSTEC? These are our all neighboring countries. So why don't you promote this kind of literary festival in the international platform for better interaction, cultural trades, and all interactions with the so one by one, if you could say deep into insight, so that everyone could be really appreciate your views. Thank you very much.
I think that's a terrible idea, because the less the governments have to do with culture and literature, the better. And especially given the governments that we have, just look at Pakistan, Imran Khan, who's never read a book in his life, Narendra Modi, and Sheikh Hasina, right? I mean, I'm not even going to Nepal and Sri Lanka right now. Or
They've all written books.
They may have all written books, but author
Sri Lanka is a very good guy.
Oh, Sri Lanka, I'm leaving out because I don't know exactly how much he's read in Sri Lanka. My point is that governments and all should be supporting the arts, but should not be putting their dirty fingers into the conducting of art institutions or film festivals. There should be no ministers inaugurating any cultural event. They have nothing to do with culture. Unless the minister herself or himself has some standing as an intellectual figure like Václav Havel or someone like that, they should have no place except they can come and sit in the audience and be an audience. It should be filmmakers and film critics should walk, and film actors and actresses should be the people, or other intellectuals should be there at film festivals, same with book festivals, and SARC and BRICS are political entities with all kinds of political maneuvering going on, and we don't need to let that kind of international politicking dirt enter into, which is already a complicated arena of literature.
How to promote yourself? That is what
We don't need to promote it through this. I think we promote through writing, through readership, through open dialogue, through freedom of expression, through wide publication, through looking at different canons and dismantling them and putting together new temporary canons, not giving a hierarchy between award winners and non-award winners, or English writers and non-English writers. All these things we break up. And first of all, let's look at our education system and teach our kids to read and write, so that we actually have an audience in a few years who can actually receive the literature that we're writing. That is the main thing.
We had another question.
My name is Anuradha, and mine is more of a layman's question pertaining to today's topic, which is the impact of literary awards. The other factor which also plays a huge important role, I guess, in today's writers being popularized, say for example the example of George R. R. Martin or Mario Puzo, the impact of on-screen adaptation from books, as in how big a role does that play when it comes to popularizing light writers? Because we know a few writers from the Indian scene as well who write books in English and are not so very appreciated in literary circles, but then again they're very popular writers and they sell out a lot. As well as Francis Ford Coppola, when he was discussing The Godfather, he said that he did not like Mario Puzo's book, The Godfather, but then again, after the movie was made, Mario Puzo's book sold like cake, and he's a very popular writer internationally. So how does the book to movie adaptation or series adaptation that plays an important role in popularizing writers' work?
Sorry, could I ask a question connected directly to that? Is because the recent shortlist actually had excerpts of the books as films at JCB. Wasn't that? The book was
No,
translated.
there's actually a whole different award for that now. They've got everything covered, I'm telling you.
Yeah. So they had short films made instead of excerpts.
Oh, that was just book trailers. Very beautifully made, in fact. But in Bombay, they do have it's called.
They have an award for book trailers?
No. They have something called a word to screen award, where they read books with the specific idea of can these be adapted to screen, and then they give prizes to the books they think can be adapted to screen. So there's that also.
Yeah, actually it's a very strange process because
Yeah.
I was at one of these nominated for this. And the strange thing is, you kind of go up and pitch to there's a room full of studio people, and that has also changed interestingly in the last couple of years. It was producers, now no producers come, it's only Netflix and Amazon and Jio and all these platforms present. And what really struck me as distressing is, novelists are really trying to meet the filmmakers halfway. Like they're actually making videos and okay, here's I'm doing half the job. Whereas in an ideal world, a sensitive director would just look at a book, and these are different medium. You can't, okay, I'm going to make my book more film worthy, and therefore now you become a film or a series. I'm like, why would you do that? I mean, this is something which I've always, Anuradha Roy, said this very interesting thing about the Atlas of Small Things. No, the God of Small Things. That it's a deeply visual but stubbornly unfilmable book. Now that is very interesting. That a book can be visual. It can be very sensory. But I think a novel is visual in its own terms. The visuality of a novel is not necessarily the visuality of film. These are different things. It's like, I'm talking to filmmakers and talk of film being made and all that, and they were like, oh, it's essentially creating a new work of art. It's a completely new work of art with that as an inspiration. But now I think we are living in an age where books are, we are not complete till it's a web series and later a filming made. And I've been hearing that publishing houses are very about to sort of employ people whose job is to summarize books as pitches to the entertainment industry. And like, I mean, this I think is an insult to both film and books. You know, the imaginative director reaches out and sees the possibilities hidden in a book. It doesn't have to be made for them. So I think these are very strange times we are living in.
Do you think that in this process, in the audiovisual process, social media plays a very important role? Because nowadays we see that writers, before the book is released, they are sort of publishing the cover of the book or from their personal pages, etc., and publicizing the book in that sense. So do you feel, and also they are conducting live sessions, talking about the book, and what can you expect from the book, etc. So do you think social media plays an important role there?
I remember that time when one of my writer friends actually put out his forthcoming book on his Facebook post. This was about 10 years ago. And another writer friend of mine would just come into Facebook and says, what is this guy doing? It's just wrong. How can you promote yourself on Facebook? It's a social space and he's bringing in self-advertisement. Now I think back to that moment and I start laughing because actually Facebook is a self-advertisement space in which sometimes you can have other kinds of sharing. And the other thing I find hilarious is these trailers for books. I mean, really, it's a bloody book. You're supposed to imagine it. What is this idea of trailers to sell the book, where you already have a character or a setting of a jetty or an old castle or whatever. You're taking that possibility of imagination away from the reader. So it'd be interesting to do a trailer for a book which didn't do that. But I mean, I find all these melding of things at one level interesting, at another level, the old curmudgeonly classicist in me wants to put in quite serious boundaries and say, you can't have that in this, you can't have this and that. But I'm going to lose on that. So.
I have a related question for Ruchir. Have you ever thought of converting The Last Edition Lab to a movie? I thought it was an incredible book. I totally loved it and very, very funny, and very visual. But I never thought, started thinking about it, never thought it can so easily convert into movies. So being a novelist and a filmmaker, have you ever thought of converting your own book into a movie, and if so, how?
I was kind of pleased that I didn't think it could ever be filmed when I finished the book. Partly because of the scale, because of the cast of thousands and moving back and forth across 100 years and the sci-fi stuff or the futuristic stuff. But then I found myself thinking that maybe it could work as, one of those, I don't want to use the word comics, but what is that Israeli film that use that kind of graphic novel kind of, animated graphic novel kind of thing. That kind of thing would interest me if someone were to take it up. I would be happy to dismantle the book and re-script it or whatever, work with them. I don't think as a real life film, I don't want to think about it. Because again, I was kind of pleased that if I was going to make a film, then I'd have written a film script and chased the money for the film. And it's precisely because I didn't want to do that. I wanted to write the book. And there's stuff in that book that I don't think anyway, it's a conundrum, but I haven't thought about it, no.
I think we'll take one last question before we close the panel subject.
So most of you writers don't exactly agree with the film being made into a book adaptation. But I can tell you sometimes, from my personal experience, films do make it easier to imagine a certain scene from a novel. For example, while reading Great Expectations, I got bored at a point of time and I stopped reading the novel and I went back and watched the movie of it, which actually interested me because it was easier to imagine the scenario which was said into the book. And then after watching the movie, I went back and finished the book and I loved it. So that was a different experience for me. So about that, what would you like to say?
No, wait. I don't think any of us is saying that books shouldn't be turned into movies. The problem is when you start making a trailer, which is like a sort of pastiche of a movie, before the book is even out. I mean, I love The Godfather, and I think I love the book, and I think it's a literature of a certain kind, and the more you think about it, helped by the film, you realize that actually Mario Puzo was a fine writer who wrote a masala book which was fantastic, like people said Shakespeare or Dickens were trying to do. And what Coppola does with it is also amazing. And without books being turned into films, we would not have Pother Panchali, we would not have so many other books. So no one is saying books should not be turned into films, which are completely different works of art. It is just how you do it, how you start anticipating a film before the book is fully out, or even the writer is, he or she is actually secretly fantasizing about Netflix series as they're writing a book. To write a Netflix, don't use the pretense of a book to, I mean, I saw Sacred Games just now. I have problems with the book, but I love bits about the book. When I saw the series, I was like amazed at how they'd kind of gutted the book out and excavated it and taken certain bits, and wasn't very happy making that watching the first part. They're going to do 7 from that novel, and it's mind-boggling how that happens.
So, it's quite difficult actually when you do, when you're writing, you're not thinking of, I mean, I'm not thinking of a film at all because I'm writing a book. But if later somebody approaches you for a film, it's incredibly scary actually to think of this happening, to think that they will totally imagine your book in a different way, that your book will become an entity that you will not recognize yourself, and yet it will be said to be your book. And yet when we do see films made of books, we see them on their own terms, and often we like them very much. They're very good films. So it's a difficult question for most of us to.
Literature is probably the most abstract art form. You see, I mean, all other art forms have a directly sensory component. Music you can hear, painting you can see, film of course you can do everything. Literature is the only art form which is language, which is really just an arbitrary medium. So the thing about literature is, as we were talking, as Ruchir was saying, that the imagination is left to the reader. It obviously requires more on your part. And probably why boredom is simply another name for, I didn't want to do it, I wish somebody would do it, and that also has its beauty. When a film does bring it to life, it's like, but literature creates this beautiful blankness, right? You can see that, and everybody imagines a character differently. Everybody imagines a setting differently. Once the film is made, there's no difference. It's given to you. So one has to be a different kind of a consumer of art to enjoy literature. It's not just the fact that you have to be literate, which makes you a more bourgeois person. Film and music don't have that bourgeois thing. But apart from that, it requires you to be a more active consumer. That you must imagine this in your head and be okay with the fact that different imaginations will be different. Right?
So yeah, moving on from literary awards to, I think, a far more exciting topic, which is word to screen adaptations. But we have to close the panel now. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you for participating in this discussion, and have a nice day ahead.
Thank you.